All right, we are live, and I am with Jeff and Doug of the band Fen.
Thanks for having us, Ron.
How you guys doing?
Well, so far so good, pretty good. It's the weekend, so free time.
Yeah, a little time to rest for sure.
Yeah. So you guys just put out last month your latest album, Dear Mouse, and you've been a little dormant for a while, and come back with this. I would say you topped yourself over the last album. I mean, I love the last album, and this one just, and I was reading some places that, you were incorporating older elements of previous albums within this, and I think that it makes it all the more better.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely sort of pulled together sort of everything that we've learned over the last 20 odd years and just tried to put everything that we could into this album. So it's we had obviously lots of time to do it. Like you said, it was 2012 when the last album came out. And honestly, most of these songs were started around that time, like 2012, 13, 14 maybe. And so we were just in our on our own time, just chipping away, leaving it for a while, sometimes as long as a couple years, I think, and then coming back to it and just just doing everything we can to bring them to that state of completion that they're in right now. Although when I listen to it now, I think, oh, should have done this, should have done that. But if 12 years is not enough, like you got to put a cap on it at some time.
Um, ever since I believe it was about 10 or so years ago, you sent me uh, all your CDs up until that point, and of course, you sent me the shirt too, and I was surprised because I'd never heard of you before, and I was always wondering how you found out about me.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't remember, but I mean, at that time I was just Googling progressive rock blogs and review sites and just, reaching out into the ether to see what kind of connections could be made. I mean, that was my attempt to connect with the world and let it know about the music that we've been working on. So
I,
Google search came in handy for you, I guess. It brought you up.
yeah, at that time, it was like I was on my site. I was starting to kind of branch out into beyond like traditional progressive rock stuff. I was, and so I guess you guys came at perfect time for me because you had a little bit more than just the traditional sound. You had that, um, not so much the same vibe, but you just had the spirit of it, and but with a modern, you know, punch, so to speak. And
Yeah,
I got to say too, Doug, you got um, one of the more unique vocals
oh,
out
thank you.
there that I've heard, and because I I'm personally kind of not tired, but it's like everybody's trying to sound like someone else instead of themselves. And that's the one thing that I look for in music is I like to see something that's original, even if everything's pretty much been done before, but original approaches. And then with the vocals, I mean, it's just very unique, and it's my friend even said, I have not heard vocals like that before, and he said it just he said it was kind of blowing my mind that he was with the music that I played for him. He was expecting a certain kind of vocal, but then when you started singing, he said, "Okay, it's different, but it's in a good different because he threw me off, because your mind is always pretty much pre-programmed in a way. Okay, if you got a heavier sounding thing, you're going to have someone that's going to be, maybe growling or, shouting or stuff. And then Doug's vocals just completely like, not mess them up, but just kind of shakes them like, okay, you got to know there's, reprogram yourself to be a little more, that there's more kind of vocals out there.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the riffs that our guitarist Sam sends me, like it definitely it kind of calls for heavier vocals for a lot of the time, but I just kind of got to work within the limitations that I've got. I got to work within my own voice, and so just kind of do the best I can with them. And yeah, a different vocalist would take a totally different approach, and I think it'd be cool to hear that as well.
Yeah. So wanted to kind of get into the album Dear Mouse. This going by song, because there's not a dud on there. You listen to each one; they're slightly different from each other, but they have that it's Fenn, because when you listen to it, it just has a familiar thing. And a friend of mine was mentioning he heard bits of, especially in the aggressive department of what is it, the band Mastodon. He was hearing some of that, and then he said, and at the same time, he was hearing a little bit of in the guitar playing a little bit of like how Steven Wilson approaches the way he plays the guitar, and then I said also too that I heard it kind of has like the dark side of rock music. So I was kind of thinking of Opeth, and when they're doing the cleaner vocals, that kind of music, and when there's a little more melodic. So it's like you got all that, but then you mix it in, and you got something completely different.
Yeah, I'd say I don't want to speak for Sam, but I just know that like in terms of guitar influences, like you could probably boil it down to like Slash and Adam Jones are like the two huge influences for him. So it's cool how it comes together because Adam Jones, he's got so many sort of like one note riffs, not one, like he just goes from one note at a time to the other kind of but then Slash is just like this extravaganza of notes, right? And there's so much melody within his riffage. So I love how those two influences flow together in Sam's
Right.
play. And of course everything he just brings naturally It's very cool.
Oh yeah. So I want to start off with Ritual Light. You can tell me a little bit about the song and how it came to be.
Yeah, so that one, I think it was probably 2012. Sam was just sending me like a few sections of music, and he was experimenting with drum machines and playing bass as well. So he would send me something that sounded like almost a finished product, but it was just like a couple of sections or whatever, and then I would just um, do my best to come up with vocals to go along with it. And I mean, that's we had no sort of direction or sort of predetermined plan for how things would go. It was just like he sends me something and I react to it. That's all it is. So for that song, it just happened that at that time, I think there were some people in my life listening to a lot of Justin Timberlake, who was kind of like at the top of the charts at that point.
Right.
And so it was always like playing in the background, and I'd never really listened to that kind of music like consciously before, but I slowly kind of got drawn into like, well, his vocal abilities really, and that use of like sometimes there'll be sections where it's just all falsetto, right? And you
Right.
just don't really hear that too much in the style that we work in. So I just did my best Justin Timberlake impression for one of those sections in the verse. And yeah, I was just like, okay, this could work. And and then at the first part of the verse where it's very kind of staccato, fast delivery, I was, in my own way, just thinking like who does vocals like that? And of course, like Michael Jackson is the total master of that clipped, fast delivery. Um, I'm in no way trying to like copy him or be like
Right.
anywhere as good as him. I'm just trying to take some elements of that style of vocal delivery to try to take myself in a new direction that I haven't done personally before. And yeah, this song came together pretty nicely with the parts that Sam gave me, and then he wanted me to with this album to sort of expand on the guitar parts a bit, just with my own ability. So I ended up adding a section onto what he'd given me, and adding some more vocal melody, extending it over there. And at that point, it was like, okay, we have like four sections in a row that just flow nicely together, and that was basically everything we needed to complete the song. And then it was just like, well, how do we want to sort of change the nuance as things move around, the sections come back, we want it to be a little bit different. So yeah, that was the story of that one.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect way to open up the album. Just kind of just it's like draws you right in.
Yeah, thank you. It was almost a no-brainer for us when we were trying to figure out how to order the songs. It's like, well, that one just stood out as being the strongest in a certain inviting kind of way. So
Right.
figured lead with that, and then, figure out where to go from there.
All right. And the next one, Recall.
Yeah, recall. Jeff, do you want to talk about that one
Well,
at all?
well, I don't have a lot to say as far as the writing and the composition of the songs because if we go back 10 years, I was sort of present at the inception of some of these songs. You know, Doug and Sam are the principal writers of the band, and they've always got things on the burner, things percolating. We gave you 10 songs with this album, but I know there's another 10, 20 songs still kind of in rough demo shape. I'm assuming, I don't want to speak for Doug on this, but there's always music going around. So I can't speak to the composition of it, but when I was working on bass lines a couple of years ago, it was one of the weird ones for me. I was like, this is really outside. And it took me a while to find the groove. And then when I found it, it was like, oh, this is one of my favorite songs. It's yeah, it's kind of got a funky, it's got something going on that's not usual with Finn. And I don't think it was a conscious effort. It was probably just organic. You know, we're doing what we've always done. It just happens to be that through the years and through, years of refining songcraft that, things are getting more concise. And, you know, I'm not sure it was a conscious effort, but I know generally with the songs, a lot of it is probably originating with Sam's riffs, his guitar riffs, and his really rough outlines, and then Doug being the consummate arranger and coalescing the ideas and kind of trying to draw a straight line through the song. That's sort of, I think, what Doug's forte is. So with that one, I'd have to hand it over to Doug to talk about the nitty gritty of that song.
Yeah, I mean, um, we were working on that one very early on. Definitely 2012. We had like a almost finished product there, and we were actually sending it out to try to get a grant to record it at that.
Oh, okay.
Got turned down, but yeah, I mean, Sam was he was kind of going down this path a little bit of exploring doing film scoring. And so in doing that, he was taking on other instruments. So he bought himself a bass and started writing bass lines and throwing synths in there. So like you gotta credit him for some of those bells and whistles that turn up on the album that are kind of like fresh sounds for us. So yeah, I mean,
Well,
I love that bass line that he came up with at the beginning. It really carries the song. It's got this kind of slow, dark, little bit evil feeling to
Yeah.
it. And it brings a certain character out in my voice. Like um I love it when the music forces me into these these sort of unfamiliar vocal characters that just pop out and I just run with it. Um I like in the middle of the song there's kind of this crazy breakdown that Sam's doing and I just go into this voice that I don't think I've ever used before on a recording. So when a song does that and when the music draws that out of me, I just feel like we're going in the right direction. It feels good.
Yeah. And then the next one, you got Season to Live.
Yeah,
that's
so
one, yeah,
yeah, go
that's
ahead,
one of my
Jeff.
favorites. That's one of my favorites. And that was one that, if you go back to 2012, we had released our fifth album, Of Losing Interest. We did a little tour. We did some local gigs, and of course there was some new songs in the kind of percolating. And that was one that I remember hearing an early version of it. I think at the time, well, I won't. We called it. It was called Beach Walk, and I remember hearing the demo of it. And it wasn't just. It was like a very developed demo with like a couple of guitar parts. There was vocals. There was harmony. There was bass. There was drum machine. And I remember Doug and Sam presenting it to the rest of the band, myself and our previous drummer Nando, and we didn't roll our eyes, but we were kind of like, what is this? This is very different than that hard-edged primordial kind of music that had a lot of hair on it. This was a lot smoother and a lot more accessible. And at the time, we were also working on material as a band in the room, rehearsing, writing, improvising. But Doug and Sam also had songs that were going to come in, and that was one of the early ones that at the time it was like kind of intimidating because you're like, well, what are we going to do with this? It's already done, but then years later, when I was actually working on the bass lines, it definitely emerged as one of my favorites. It's just got a lot of things in there. We've come to a point where we're able to streamline our musical ideas into a nice, cohesive, kind of concise package. And that one is a perfect song. It's just everything. It's a nice package. Great, great memorable melodies going throughout, and of course the guitar Doug and I have talked about Sam's role as a guitar player frequently, and his uniqueness, his approach. It's just sort of just he's one of a kind. So I love in the chorus he's using a lot of sustained chords, basically playing two chords, but at the same time. So you have this strange dissonance that complements, every side of the chorus. So it's still very unique, but it's in a really a nice even package. One of my favorites.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that, Doug?
yeah, no, that's very well articulated. Um, I remember when Sam gave me that song, like he gave it to me with like those trumpets in the beginning, and like it just made me kind of giggle. I think both of us thought it was a bit funny. Like the vibe at the beginning, I mean, we talked about it. To me, it just felt like, okay, that we're setting the scene for like sitting outside in a cafe in Italy or something. There's just something
Right.
that felt so not Finn about it. Um, but the years went by and we thought, oh, maybe we could replace those trumpets with some other synth sound or some other guitar replacing it. And we tried things and it's like in the end we just abandoned ourselves to the Italian cafe patio there.
Right.
Just like, oh, whatever. We we're not as controlling as we might have been in the past with how the songs come out. Our yeah, we're not as concerned about sounding a certain way as we might have been when we were younger.
Well, I remember way back in the late '90s when we all first met, or when I met Doug and Sam. I was impressed about how clear their vision of what they wanted to do. They were forming a band, and they were very clear on kind of what it was going to sound like. It was going to be dark. It was going to be melodic. It was going to be all these things, and it didn't. There wasn't a lot of room for extra ideas or something that was off what the plan was. And they held true. Together we held true to that kind of vision. But 25 years or so later, we've all kind of expanded our musical palette and incorporating different ideas. And I think maybe we've said what we wanted to say in the early days or in the first few albums, and then it was like, well, we had to go somewhere. So we went somewhere that was a little bit outside or expanded it. Yet, yet it's still Fen, because when we have this group of people, or especially really when Doug is singing and Sam is playing guitar, it's unmistakable what you're hearing. You're hearing Fen, and even when it's outside of our box, it's still got those characteristics.
Now, a friend of mine was mentioning that bands, when they first start off, they like you just said, they have a certain vision right here, and as they grow older and have more experience of recording, and then they get new equipment, then all of a sudden they're they're able to. It's like there's more to what's out there than what you had first envisioned. And because I told them, I said, if you listen to their first album and you listen to this new album, you hear differences, but it's the same band, but it just the obvious is the young version, and but they had over the years you basically new influences, whether conscious or not. It happens. I mean, you can lock yourself up in a house and not listen to new music, but the television going on, or if you watch a movie, you're going to hear something, and it's going to kind of get implanted in your brain, and it's like whether you like it or not, that's going to come out somewhere. So that's really cool. It's I like when bands expand on themselves to continue to I mean, you take exactly what the term progressive rock means. Each album is progressive from the previous one. You're not staying stuck on one sound and that's it.
Well, that's a strange. Well, it's hard to have an opinion about that because you could take a band like, well, maybe AC/DC that didn't try to go beyond the initial kind of plan,
Right.
and it doesn't deter from the greatness of it. I mean, it's perfectly suitable for what they do, and it doesn't
Right.
have to be progressive. So it's hard to take a for me to take a judgment because I enjoy, simple music, or not
Right.
simple music, because prog can be simple too. If just one note for 3 minutes or something can be prog.
Right.
Uh, it's hard to take an opinion. I have a lot of different musical styles, and I enjoy listening to a lot of different genres. Uh, Prog is probably my favorite, just because I love the craft of music, of utilizing everything that's available, every tool. Maybe I don't mean technology necessarily, but musicality, and you know, not being afraid to try different chords or chord for voicings, or like with Fen, we have this really rich melody on the top of the music, and then all this detail and you know uh, breadth and width underneath. And you said earlier, you were expecting maybe some shouting vocals on top of a
Right.
really heavy bottom, but the fact that you don't, I think that's one of the elements that makes the band progressive, because it's sort of, like taking, really ringing it out and really, really seeing like what's there, and not being afraid to like kind of go out on a limb. And I've done that a lot with my approach to playing with the band. Because I wasn't really a metal listener. Like, to me, heavy metal always was like Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, whereas nowadays that's just classic rock. It's not heavy at
Right.
all. So I didn't have that deep. I think we've been told before that we sound like Opeth. I never listened to Opeth, so I don't know what they sound like. But I imagine it's probably a little heavier than
It's a little
than
heavier.
we
It's a
always
little
are.
heavier, and it's just uh, more of just the vibe that you get from it. It's not because Opeth has a very heavy sound, um, pretty much, and it's just the idea is like you in in a similar vein, but without being all they're doing it note for note, type of a thing,
So
and
basically just mixing it up a little, like shaking up all the
yeah,
ingredients.
yeah, and
We all listen to different music. Or when I met the band, I had like a couple of favorite bands that neither Doug or Sam listened to, and then when they quoted their influences, I didn't listen to them. So it was strange how we pushed through, not having a lot of common denominators. But I think we had a rapport in our playing when we played. Somehow we kind of fit together. I mean, it's strange how it works out, because usually you'd think, oh, we all like the same thing, we're all going to agree, then we write music together. But sometimes the best is when you come from a completely different place, but
right,
out of respect and desire, motivation, you agree to write music together, to go forward somehow. And it's tough because you have to have a lot of arguments or a lot of conversations or discussions about the music,
right,
and that can really bog it down. And I think maybe Doug made a reference at another interview, or when there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen sharing their opinion about the music, it can take a long time and a long process. And a lot of the music with Fen is really just between two people having those conversations, and you know how long it takes to get that done. So once or twice I've come more to the forefront, or another member of the band has come to the forefront, and it's become a labor of love, because it's very difficult with everyone voicing their opinion and pulling it this way and that way. But to me, the result is that you end up with something very different than what you could have imagined, more than what you could imagine.
right.
It took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. And I'm mostly referencing the last album that we did, Of Losing Interest, where I had a more creative um, participation in that. Dear Mouse is, I think what makes it work is that it's more streamlined. It doesn't have everybody pulling it in a whole bunch of different directions.
Right.
it's very streamlined and it's very accessible. Uh, yeah, it's a great achievement.
All right. The next one is the password is I believe, and that, to me that has the chorus is very catchy, and and it's something that I find that's missing with a lot of the modern progressive rock is you don't have that catchy thing that's staying with you that just makes you hit repeat. After it's done, you want to hit repeat to hear it again because it's like, yeah, it's there's a vibe to it, and that's one of the things I love about music is when it gets that kind of a vibe, then that to me makes songs better from a listener standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, when we individually sort of approach a song, often we have our own sort of personal goals about our own playing and whatnot. And I think was I'm speaking for Sam because he's not here, but I think with that riff, he wanted to really simplify what he was doing. I think he expressed to me that he was feeling like his riffs were too complicated or something like that, and he wanted to sort of experiment with that power of simplicity. So yeah, when he sent me that riff, I was like, who is this? Like it's so straight ahead at first.
Right.
Or sorry, the verse really is the straight ahead part. That main riff that starts off, it's characteristic Sam in the way that it's quite a long rock riff. Like it's not just this short little 1 or 2 bar things. It's got like a fully developed pattern. But yeah, um, I felt like the vibe was right away like this 80s kind of cock rock. And I was just thinking like, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I gonna do to this? This just doesn't feel like familiar at this point. It's familiar to other bands, but for us. But again, yeah, it's just sort of caution to the wind, just start experimenting. And what I did come up with, it actually didn't take too long to come up with something and just went with it. We wanted to keep the song as short and concise and punchy as possible. And so, I mean, that I'm not sure if it's the shortest one on the album, but it's like barely over 2.5 minutes, I think, which
Yeah,
is, I don't know, like that's
it's
been
one.
one thing. How
It's
long?
one of the short. It's one of the short ones.
Yeah. Um, I mean, we've always more recently, I guess we've been striving for like more concise, shorter compositions that achieve the same thing as like a 4.5 minute song. So that was kind of our foray into that length of song and just seeing can we make this work? Does it do all the things that a song should do in that time? And does it leave you satisfied um, wanting rather than feeling like you wanted more and you didn't get it?
Right.
So it's nice to hear you, Ron, you say that when you get to the end, you want to hit play again, because that's kind of a combination of those two. It's like I didn't quite get
Right.
enough, but I want more right now, and there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of the more accessible songs on the album where, you know, I would say if someone is into progressive rock per se, and they're more into like mainstream rock, I give them that song and say, check this out, and if you like it, go to the rest of the album, you know. But check it out first, because some people are always a little, they want more, but they're kind of afraid to go seek it, and I'm the opposite. I want more, so I go seek it. I'm not satisfied with what the core bands that I listen to. I always want to hear more, and YouTube has this algorithm going on me that all of a sudden like 5 bands just popped up because I listened to this one band. It popped up saying, "Oh, you should listen to this." I listened to that, and it's like, you're not doing me any favors in the wallet department, but for my ears, you're just setting off fireworks for me, and that's so. It's like I always tell people, explore. Don't stay in your little box of what you listen to, because you're going to miss out on so much that's out there. And just because you said, like you were saying earlier, not really a metal person, I hear a lot of people that say that, but then sometimes they'll say, "Oh, but this song is my a favorite," and I said, "Well, that's a metal song." Oh, so it's like, don't put yourself in a box, so to speak. You know. Now you got the next one here, like dying on a hill of a cubicle, window, steel, and concrete. Well, that's the longest
It's a
word
mouthful.
song. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, this one, I mean, so much credit goes to Sam for all the ideas within here. And for me, it was just a question of getting throwing some vocal melodies on top, and then the sort of often painstaking process of structuring it effectively, just tweaking and tinkering and cutting sections in half and seeing if it works. It felt like a bit of a departure from what we were doing, because it almost reminded me of like a Metallica type riffage, which again for Sam is a bit unusual to have that vibe. Yeah, and then the sort of blistering guitar solo at the end, it reminded me of this band called Dragon Force, where it's just like these
Oh yeah.
ludicrously fast solos. And so yeah, it was again just like how the heck do I fit into this? And because I'm not like a 80s rock vocalist with all that grit and swagger. So it was a challenge to feel sort of comfortable over that music.
that was a very difficult song to track, partly because of the speed and because of all the nuance. You know, if you're in a band and you're playing with Sam Levin, um, there's so much detail that needs to be addressed, like needs to be followed and needs to be accentuated, because so much is going on that if you just let things happen and you don't really shine a light on things, so much goes to waste. So that song, like many of the songs on the album Dear Mouse, there's so much detail. There's so much music going on. Not to step too outside of the specific song, but in general, you know, well, when I will, we'll get to it to a little bit later. I'm trying to formulate an opinion here, but yeah, there's a lot of detail with that song, and I struggled a little bit, as I was learning the songs and starting to come up with bass lines. I was responding to the music, and I basically, it was about a couple years ago that I was actually hearing all the songs in a almost a complete version. Like they were arranged, there was guitar overdubs, there was some vocal harmonies. The songs were really, they had a lot of parts going on. So I was responding by coming up with all these bass lines, counterpoint, foreshadowing, vocal melody, doubling a guitar solo at the very end or bringing something that came at the beginning. I was really doing a lot of different bass lines, and the guys kept sending me long emails saying, "That's great. Can you trim it down a bit? Can you play less notes?" And then I would do that, and they'd say, "Okay, can you simplify it even more? Okay, don't do the foreshadowing. Okay, don't do the contrapunct. Okay, can you just follow the guitar lines?" And so, because there's so much there, and so I would do that, and they'd be like, Yeah, there's still too much going on, and it comes down to too many cooks in the kitchen again. Once I start, because it was changing the songs, it was taking away from the focus of the vocals and the guitar, and so it ended up that actually, Jeff, Sam's already recorded all the bass parts on the demo. Can you give those a listen and maybe just play those exactly with adding your own touch? So I think uh, that one. Trying to follow the guitar parts in Dying on a Hill, it was a real struggle because it's not for the faint-hearted. Once you go down that path, it's like climbing a mountain and then falling down it. And you just have to surrender and go for it. But yeah, that's also one of my favorite songs on the record. It's strange when Doug is saying it's sort of outside, bit of a departure from what, because to me it's a very it's almost a typical Fen song. It's got all the detail, the rich detail. It's, and of course, what Doug did with it on top with the vocal melody, it just took it to another level. So, I mean, that's a great thing about the the writing partnership in this band of Doug and Sam, and occasionally when I throw in my two bits, is that they're complementary. You got someone like Sam who every idea he comes up with you've never heard before, like so unique, and then when Doug gets his hands on it and brings it to reality or something, and like I said, draws a straight line through, and then you have this song that's palatable. So together they kind of balance each other out and complement, and that's a great example of that song. Yeah, I really love that song. Really love playing to it. I didn't personally have much to do in the creative process of it, so I'm kind of like a fan in that way, listening to it. And I think maybe on this album, having less creative input allowed me to kind of be outside a bit and be more of like a cheerleader almost.
Right.
Like anything I'm working on. The first time I hear the songs, sorry, the first 100 times I hear the songs, I'm like, yeah, they're okay. They're all right. But then they grow on you, of course, and as you're working on parts, and if you're a player and you're playing to them, then you start to merge. And it was at a point after a few months of working on the songs where I started to realize that these songs were actually very special. Like there was some intensity that was fresh, um, and like that's a great song. Yeah, I love that one, Diana Hill. The extended title I was never aware of until close to when this album was released, and I was able to get my hands on Doug's lyrics and get in there and kind of read, what he was up to with the lyrical concepts. Uh, Now that I've listened to the song a couple of thousand times, I get the title, but it is a mouthful. But it sets it up more clearly of what maybe the song's about. It gives you a little more of a, oh, sounds like an office building, sounds like an office tower, sounds like a job, sounds like a lot of things. So it was that's my interpretation of it. Um, a great one. Anyone that's worked in I don't know, maybe a dead end job could relate to that song lyrically because it's got a great tone to it. There's a few songs like that that have that very relatableness. Maybe if you go back to earlier records, they're a little more ambiguous. The lyrics are kind of harder to interpret, which is cool. You don't have to know exactly what the writer was thinking. You can interpret it your own way. But these songs are very relatable and accessible, which is a great development for the band to arrive at that point. Again, I think subconsciously, or maybe with some focus toward where we want to go. But I think things happen very organically, as they should, as they usually do anyway.
And then coming up to, I would say one of my favorites off the album, "The Seam of the Heart," and I believe that's
Okay.
the longest one.
Yeah, that and definitely the most progressive
Yeah.
on the album. That one, Sam had a few ideas that were not enough for a song, and he also didn't think very highly of them because, well, he felt like they were too close to like a Tool type sound for the main riffs, and it does have that sound. Um, but I just wouldn't let him toss that one out. And I basically worked relentlessly learning his guitar parts and expanding on what was there. So I think by the end of it, I probably wrote maybe 30 or 40% of the guitar parts on that song and definitely put it into an arrangement where it went from just a fragment to a song. And and after I put all that work in, I think finally Sam was willing to relent and accept that it might be okay to keep working on. So yeah, it was a huge undertaking. It's not like when you write a 6-minute song, it's not the same work, same amount of work as writing 2 3-minute songs because you have to keep the listener's attention like continuously for that time. So I feel like it's like exponentially harder to do as you extend a song. Yeah, and then sort of once I had like a structure worked out, and then Sam took over all the guitar parts because he recorded everything on that song and put his own twist and threw in some solos that I was just kind of like jaw dropping towards the end there. And yeah, it was just one of those things where we had to sort of throw every trick, every musical trick at it just to keep it interesting.
That that was the one where I said for the Mastodon, the aggressiveness of the instrumentation is right there. And then when you went to your vocals, um I meant that's where I was said to the person. It's kind of like it's steering you off. You're going down the main road, and then the vocals take you to a different place that that you never thought would be possible, and yet it works, and that's how I perceive that song. Is it's like it. I mean, just about every song you guys do, it just doesn't go where normal mainstream music is supposed to go. You know, you just veer off, whether it's to the right or the left, or you make a U-turn and then come back. You know, whatever it is, it just you kind of make it the music more interesting, and that's why I always fall back to you guys' music. You know,
Well,
whenever
Ron,
I'm
that's
listening.
just, sorry, I was going to say that's despite our best efforts to sound as normal and mainstream as possible. Honestly, we're just trying to make a good song. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, this is just how we try to do it. And
Right.
every time we think we've written a song that's like, oh yeah, this is like so accessible and catchy and the masses are gonna love this, and then you play it for someone and they're kind of scratching their head like, I'm not sure I agree. But we we're on this path and we have made some progress in that direction.
Well, that's the thing is, you know, with your music, it's like uh, I always tell someone if you want to listen to, let's say, for instance, Metallica. If you want to listen to Metallica, just go listen to Metallica. Don't don't try to sound like them. You know, it, it's kind. I I have a weird opinion about that. It's kind of like cheating the listener because it's like they're hearing a rip and all of a sudden it's not who they think it is. But if you just go and just do it as yourself, you know,
Well,
without like kind of like lifting note for note as to how another band will do it. I mean, you always like I said earlier, you always have something subconscious going on.
or you wear your influences on your sleeve, and even
Sure.
despite all best interests, like you still end up kind of sounding like your influences. If you listen to a couple of bands, then it becomes very obvious maybe what you listen to, but if you listen to a very wide spectrum and you pull out a Hank Williams riff just beside an Adams Jones riff, like you could, like that's the part that makes it ambiguous enough so that people can't tell. Sometimes you don't mean to write another Black Dog, but by golly, that sounds just like Black Dog, and then maybe it
Right.
takes another
Yeah.
person to say, hey, that sounds like you lifted it, and you get indignant about it and say, no, that's not, but you can't help it. I hear what you're saying. Sometimes you're like, you know what, that was a good song. Let's try to do what they did because it worked for them. We've had the luxury to do music always the way we wanted to, or the way the band wanted to, and um, financial considerations were never a part of it. I think we tried to appeal, but we always did music exactly the way we want to do it, and hope that someone likes it. But you can't, tailor your music and try to write to what you think it should. Metallica did some great business. Let's try to do what they did.
Right.
We don't. We've never taken. I don't think a lot of. Well, that's not true. A lot of bands do because they have financial considerations that have to be adhered to, or they have pressure from third parties that are influencing them in a negative way to do music that's more, fiscally responsible, I guess. So we've been
Right.
able to be as creative as possible, and the music just comes out the way it does. And that's the great part is that you can't really imagine what is like Seam of the Heart. I mean, all the permutations that I went through, what it took to be born, and you could never have controlled that really. You just do what you do, and when it comes out, sometimes you're like, that's not what I had planned, but it's great because it's got everyone's input, or it's got, when Doug, redid some of the guitar or did some of the guitars, and then Sam redid. It went back and forth a few times, and then you end up with something. I mentioned that a lot of my bass lines, I tended to just follow exactly what Sam had already created on the bass on the demos. But when I play it, everyone is saying that it sounds like me or it sounds different just through my own nuance or the way I feel the groove or where I put the beat just before or just after, a little different. Um, so I lost my point, but I think you get it. You just do what you do and it ends up
Right.
kind of where it
Yeah.
is.
But there is some bands out there that they just consciously go and trying to emulate someone, and that's the one where you can hear it in
Right.
some bands when they're doing that.
Well, sometimes you don't really have any ideas of your own. Like I think Jack Black made a good reference to the band Rush, how some bands they only have so much sauce in the bottle, like rocket sauce,
Right.
and sometimes a few shakes and one song, and that's all they have left. And other bands can shake their bottle for years and decades even, and more sauce keeps coming out. I love that
Right.
quote.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Fenn is that way. Like there's so much juice in the machine. Doug especially, he's got his solo albums like Comparison. Sam's got film composing stuff, and I've got loads. I've got years of demos that I've just sitting on, looking for an avenue to do something. We've all got a lot in us, so hopefully we're not lifting too much material from our favorite bands and what have you. But if we do, it's unconscious, and I don't think we try to.
And plus, well, I kind of think too is there's a difference between lifting and also where it's, you hear the influences and you can say, and for the listener, you have like throughout listening to Fenn music, I'm always saying, I don't know where I heard this before, but I heard it before. But then at the same time, I'm saying, well, yeah, because a couple Fenn songs ago, it's in your brain. So when you hear it, there's such a familiarity to it, and that's when I think it's done right. Because when you have a familiarity where it's like subconsciously the listener is like going, I know what that is, but I can't picture it. But it's like a focal point for the listener that they go, okay. When they listen to your music, they their influences, but there's nothing that is blatant about it. It just, it's just certain ways, like you were mentioning between Adam Jones and Slash. Those are two different types of things, but when mixed together, it's something different. But then you hear the elements of the things and subconsciously.
Well, it almost becomes a new thing if you take
Yeah,
blue, which is blue, and you take yellow, which is yellow, and then you kind of put them together, you have a different color. So it's
yeah.
hopefully that's what ends up with the band, with
Oh
us,
yeah.
is all our colors combined. It comes up with a purple. I don't know, something that's very,
Right.
no, probably more black. It's probably the color that we end up with. Um,
Okay. And then your next one, our latest quarry.
So once again, Sam had like a pretty nicely worked out set of sections for that one, and he was also providing like bass and drum machines in these demos that he was giving me. Um, I didn't always agree with his sort of choice of beats when it came to programming the drums, and I think he loves his details. So when he gets into doing something, he throws in a lot of variations and a lot of detail. And we really struggled with that song, trying to figure out what the sort of main beat should be. And when finally we got Randall Stoll in for drums, he just played straight through it without even, it seemed like, without, I know he'd been listening in advance, but he just sort of played straight through it in this like simple kind of grooving and driving kind of way that all of our years of painstaking programming and arguing with each other, it all just vanished. And it was like, thank God, Randall. Like finally somebody knows what they're doing here. Yeah,
mhm.
it was a huge relief. And suddenly the song just started flowing properly and all of our
Hmm.
sections just moved from one to the other without issue.
Oh yeah, the drums on this record are like the glue. It's like a glue that just ties everything up. Randall as always did an incredible performance, and uh, that one is a good example. It's another straight line. You know, we as prog lovers, we like to niggly and go curve and switchbacks and take a long time to kind of
Right.
get somewhere. But his drumming approach is it's not simple, but it's what's needed.
Yeah.
It's saying exactly what's needed, nothing more, nothing less, and very solid performance on for the drums on that song. Absolutely.
All right. Then we got uh, an acronym here, EDBD.
Edie beady, empty dish and bottle dry. So yeah, Sam, he wrote that crazy frantic riff, and yeah, again, it just felt like, wow, this is a whole new zone that we're into. And he and I had a lot of disagreements about structuring and how the song should unfold. And at one point, he wanted to toss the original riff completely and just use the variations that we'd come up with over the years. And for a song that's so short, there was a lot that went into that one just to get it where it finally rests today. Um, yeah, I love again what Randall did for that song is I can just sit and sort of tune everything else out and just listen to what the drums are doing and I'm totally happy. I'm like that's excellent. And he just brings so much life and energy to these songs that we've just been like flogging and beating for years and hammering at little sections of it, chipping things away, adding things onto it, and then Randall comes in and just breathes life into it. So it's such a relief to have that happen towards the end of the process.
With this band, because there's so much detail in the guitar and the way that Doug layers his vocal harmonies, and the way the bass comes in has to really follow things, and some of the drummers that we've had in the past, they've had to follow every little 16th of a everything's got to be accented just the right way. So the music ends up being very dense, and but a drummer like Randall Stoll comes in, and he follows when necessary and accentuates certain events in the song. But when he just comes through, like a train going through the middle, it's like Doug says, it just breathes life into it, because it gives us space by not following every little thing. I don't know, Ron, if you're familiar with our second album, Heron Leg.
Yes.
That's an example of everything is so tight and dense and choreographed. There's no improv really on the album, no open space. But Randall's approach, and also on our third album, Congenital Fixation, also Randall played drums to that, and that album as well has a little more air in it. I think we were really proud of that when we did that, and that was great to have him participate in that. But that just shows what different musicians that come into the fold, come in and out, they add their stamp, or they bring their characteristic to it, and it changes it in a way that you didn't really think you wanted to, until you realize, yeah, that's what it needed. It needed some air, it needed some space to make all the other rest of it relevant. Because
Right.
if you're a loud band that's at like 100 dB the whole song, loud, it doesn't seem loud anymore. It's not meaningful. But when you
Right.
present the dynamics, obviously this band is very keen on its loud parts and its quiet parts, and creating like a drama really in the music. You know, we don't have like we don't have like a Tales from Topographic Oceans. We don't have an 80-minute
Right.
opus. But um, being able to have all that detail, well, and then like I'm saying, like the drums in this example help to open things up a bit. Um, it's very difficult sometimes when you're following things, when you're following riffs and you're being very specific. It's not like everyone has their own part that are completely different from each other. Like I'll reference Yes again. You listen to something like Heart of the Sunrise, or there's some doubling in the beginning, but everyone has a completely different part that has not related to each other. But when it's all combined, then you end up with this whole picture. So it's nice when Rhino can come in and interpret what he thinks the beat should be, and it's very different than what you thought, but it's also completely appropriate. What he's doing
Right.
fits like a glove. So he's great that he was able to come on board and help out with this record.
And then we come up to the next song, the title track, Dear Mouse. Now, for
Yeah,
me,
so
I hear something completely different than what you've done before, because it's more low key at the beginning, and then I like the use of that drum machine. That's one of my favorites of that.
Hmm.
the credit again goes to Sam Levin for that one. And I think I have to say that his all the work that he did in that world of film scoring and composition, he really sort of drew that together in for this song, and he just created a fresh palette for us to work with, because he was behind the drum machine. He was behind, there's all sort of like different synths and other instruments going on texturally in the background, as well as like right and left guitar parts doing their own kind of unique thing and coming together and sort of weaving in and out of each other. So yeah, when he sent that to me, it was just like kind of refreshing to hear, and I didn't feel at all intimidated by the sort of pressure to be like a heavy metal vocalist or anything.
Right.
And like I've written before about this song, it just came together like with ease. It was very natural. And I think almost like within the first session that I just started improvising to it, I had like melodies that were pretty much going to stick. And so I think the only thing that we needed was a bridge. I wrote a bridge for it on guitar and then added vocals. And and then that was it. It was just sort of tinkering from that point on. And it really did feel like that song was kind of the heart of the album, like the story behind it being that like when we were starting out as a band, we were renting this dilapidated house in East Vancouver, and we set up the basement for rehearsing in. Um, and then one day we were told that we were going to have to move out, because apparently the owners wanted to move their family into the house. Seemed a little suspect anyway. Um, so we ended up leaving, but the song is about sort of imagining the last night in that house. And it eventually did get demolished. So it's kind of imagining like it's the night before the demolition and just sitting there together at the kitchen table and having some drinks together. And um, another unique thing about that house is that we did have cockroaches at one time. Well, actually, the first day we moved in, we discovered cockroaches. We did have um, fleas for a while. I'm not sure how that came about. We did have a cat. And then we ended up with a mouse problem as well. So
Go figure.
we did have a lot of company there. And yeah, so the song is really just about us sort of having a last night there, and then the mouse coming out to join us for a little beverage, to
Right.
honor our time there. So yeah, I really felt like because this album has, it took 12 years to make, and it's it just felt like we pulled so many ideas together to make this happen, and it really does draw from sort of everything we've learned over the years, that it felt kind of like a nice summation of what Fan is about, to tie it into that house where we lived, and how that was really a wonderful place to have, like at that stage in your life when you're young and you've got so much energy to pour into a band and you've got a place to do it. It's a it's a special thing, and it's hard to come by, I think.
Finding as a band, as a live band, finding rehearsal space in whatever city is really difficult sometimes. Even when you have a space that's designated as live, for live bands, you still get noise complaints, and having that space, that's actually where Doug and Sam were living when I first met them. And I remember that basement was all outfitted, some soundproofing, amateur soundproofing, but we had a drum set down there, their amps. I remember the roof in the basement kind of went like about 5'11" and 3/4, and I'm 6'6". So I remember rehearsing in that basement for a year or so, crouched over and like sitting down and but it added to the vibe for sure.
Right.
Having the space is crucial, because without all that opportunity, I mean, you can do things in headphones, you can use plugins and your DAW to rehearse, but a live band, that's sort of what our focus was at the time. We were going to do shows. I mean, it always,
Right.
not everyone in the band has been like performance oriented, but myself coming to the band, I, when I met the guys, I had been demoing and four tracking for about 10 years. I had loads of demos. I had played in bands. I had all this influence. I was a player. I love touching my instrument. I love playing notes. I like
Right.
playing the piano. I play guitar. I play drums. I play bass. I play flute, trombone. I like to play. That's what's sexy to me, is the instrument and the
Right.
performance. And I write music so that I have something to perform, because that's my main focus. So I think when I met the guys and they had this space, so it doesn't matter that my head is 1.5 feet through the ceiling.
Right.
In fact, there was a little hole cut out sort of right near where the bass amp was, that would allow me to stand up and put my head between the floors so that I could stand upright as we're rehearsing. And that was kind of a fun joke for a while. But yeah, that was Precious House. You know, we've lived in many houses since, but it's interesting that on this album, we kind of went through back to that house as sort of like the beginning and maybe the end of it all. It was sort of a neat bookending kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, because I noticed how there was a lot of emotion behind that song in particular, and it's just one of the, and it had a haunting melody to it. You know, it's like kind of, now that I know the story behind it, it has that like a bittersweet, feeling to it, and again, those are songs that stick with me more so than someone singing about what a nice, sunshiny day, you know. But those are just too fabricated, if for lack of a better term. But this one is real. This is coming from within the person and opening themselves up, showing this is what we went through. And then I like that line where you're basically inviting the little mouse to come have a drink with you guys, and it's like, okay, that's at first, I'll tell you my impression of what I thought the song was. I thought, and you guys pretty much made more detail about it, that that mouse was you guys.
Yeah, I like that.
In a basic, that it was you guys, and I knew that it had to do with something about your beginnings or being, and how or a life cycle, it had that feeling of it. This is a life cycle from beginning to end, but then the end is really not the end,
Yeah, no, I like that interpretation, Ron. Yeah, because the mouse in the song, it's going through the same thing that we were at that time, right? It was like getting kicked out. It was going to have to find a new place as well because that place was rubble a few months later.
You know what, Ron, I love about that song is that you might seem like it's one of the simpler songs on the record. I mean, like you mentioned, it's not low energy, but it's down a bit. It's a little more something to ruminate on. But it's not simple at all. There's so much detail in the programming and the little percussion and the little synths that Sam provided. What's brilliant about that song is the mix and the fact that you know you were able to find a place for all those sounds to fit, and it doesn't sound like a big cluttered mess, which it could if we put all the faders up to equal. There's a lot going on, but
Right.
but there's space, which is beautiful because there's all the detail there. So it's kind of a grower, not a shower. It grows
Right.
on you, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, like things, as any good music does, really. The more you listen to it, you find nuance. Some bands put a lot in, and some don't, and we do because that's the craft of it. It's I love architecture, like Baroque architecture, or something with detail, something with nuance, something with craft, and this song has loads of events, and it's like a little movie. Like each song is like a little bit of a mini movie or something, or a film. Not to reference the film composing and stuff that
Right.
some of us have been involved in, but just that it's an entity within itself. So much has gone into each song and making it like complete. That you like this song definitely It's like watching a movie, really, like sitting back and Seam of the Heart. Earlier we talked about it. It's like a drama that unfolds. You don't really know where it's going. You can't really predict, and it's just a great journey. Not in the 80-minute prog way, but the fact that putting so much craft into the songs. That's what makes it prog. Yeah, they're 5-minute accessible songs, maybe more, roughly 4 or 5 minute songs, but there's a lot of carving and recarving and detail and nuance that hopefully agrees with people. I mean, other than musicians, like that it could agree with the general public as well, because you know how the
Right.
general public likes things to be in a cute little Big Mac box, like which
Right.
is fine. Because hey, I like a Big Mac once in a while too myself, but most of the time I want something that's a little bitter at the first, or like a glass of red wine. It's got nuance, and it takes
Right.
time to swish it around, and these songs are kind of in that realm, but
Yeah.
way more accessible than we've ever been. So I think we kind of surprised ourselves as the songs we all kind of knew maybe in deep down, but as the songs were recorded and mixed and then the mastering, and we're like, oh, hey, we have something really special here. And yeah, my role became to remind the guys in the band, like, hey, this is great. Like, you know, good on us. Like we did something here, and
Right.
let's be proud of it. We're all kind of introverts and self-deprecating, and artists. We've moved on to something else. I mean, Doug's got stuff on the burners. But, all of us have little things percolating. We've already moved beyond. Like we're already kind of beyond the album, but we're just sort of seeing how other people are responding to it, and it's resonating with people more than anything that we've done. Yet it doesn't feel that much of a departure. Yeah, to me, it's just 10 years later. It's just the same thing, but 10 years later. But obviously, people are hearing a lot more going on, you know. So it's great that people are actually responding and relating to it.
And then the last song, Into the Blaze.
Yeah, this one is unique because Sam wrote bass parts for the song before there was any guitar. He just gave me like these bass riffs and then all kinds of textural synth stuff and textural guitar work and like layered programmed drums. It was quite the composition that he gave me. But there was no actual rhythm guitar or like anything to indicate that it was like in our sort of genre really. So the way this one worked is I actually took it upon myself to write the guitar parts, or at least the initial set of guitar parts for this song. And then as we developed it, just like the Seam of the Heart, I just handed all of the guitar duties back to Sam, and he took what I had done and just did whatever he felt like he wanted to do with it. So lots of changes and expansions and developments. Um, there's Yeah, this one was a real struggle. The tempo we were unsure about, and the keys of the verses we kept playing with and moving them up or down, or trying to find the right balance, because we is one of those songs where it is kind of hypnotic. So there's a risk of people just getting bored. So we had to
Right.
find little ways of keeping it going, keeping that interest.
Right. Yeah. All in all, really, this has been I'd have to say so far this year it's been the most listened to album that I've purchased this year. And um, and I don't have those that often. It's just like a handful of in the past maybe 5 years that I can actually say I could put it on and I'm not tired of it. But then there's stuff that you say, you have it in the back of your mind, like you have to like this, and you listen to it a couple of times, and then it's like, well, I like it, but I think it's going to go on the shelf for a while, and I'll revisit it, in maybe a year or two's time. But then there's albums like this one that, it's like it gets to the end and it's like, well, I liked it so much. It's like watching a movie that you love. You want to watch it again, and even if you just finished watching it the first time, you want to watch it again, and I've been listening to it either on my headphones or in my car. I even have, I tried, the only way I can download it is either on my tablet or my phone. For some reason, it's not having the little button to click to download on the computer. So for something like that, I have the Bandcamp app going through my Bluetooth in the car. So I get
Nice.
that. And then I also listen to it on my tablet, so it's like, it's a nice little departure from reality to listen to music. And I mean, I do it more and more. I just have to find albums that stick with me, because I'm from the generation where we're album oriented, not singles. Singles are just kind of like to draw you into the album. But the proper way to listen to music is on an album from the first song to the last song with as little interruptions as possible. I mean, life can interrupt, but if you're not, can close yourself in a room, or you got an MP3 player or your phone, and you're out walking somewhere, and you got no one else that's going to bug you. That's the best time to listen to music, because then you have no distractions, no interruptions. You're at one with the music.
Ron, I think the great thing about an album, like how you're describing it, let's just say 10 songs or 45 minutes of not continuous music, but like when you have that palette to work with, you don't have to put everything into every single song, because if you're just writing a single, then we got to put in a kitchen sink. It's okay to pull back on some. Maybe you come out with a barn burner, and then the second song is a medium tempo, and then maybe you have a ballad. Maybe you have like a snapshot of what life is almost. And so when we write 10 songs and kind of release them, yeah, it's old-fashioned maybe, just like the novel is old-fashioned, but it's a form that works for some people who want to create that way. And
Right.
you're probably thinking how much more satisfying it is when you've listened to 45 minutes of music and you've gone on an evolution, and maybe you didn't love every minute of it, but it's gonna grow on you, or you understand the place of why it's there, and it complements things. A 5-minute song that's got everything, that's great. That's great too. When you've got 5 minutes and you want to throw on something, that's fine. But I think we're not old school, but
Right.
some of us are getting up there, and we do appreciate that older format, which I do. Obviously, I still throw on vinyl. Like active listening, it requires active listening. Like sometimes I just want to have music on while I'm vacuuming, I guess,
Right.
or going for a walk. But most of the time when I listen to music, I'm actively listening to it. I don't have other things going on at the same time. I'm putting the needle on the record, and I'm staring at the wall, or I'm reading the liner notes, or I'm just listening. And but the music has to offer something to listen to. It doesn't have to. I mean, I'm not judging any level of simplicity or whatever. It's all great.
Right.
It's all music. It has its place. But when it does give you more, then it's a much more satisfying journey. it just requires more of an investment of time, and that's
Yeah,
something that people don't have. We don't have the attention span really anymore.
it's
So in
it's it's
bands
getting
like
less and
us,
less.
but I think somehow we fluked out and we're able to, like quite a few of the songs are kind of like their own entity, like their own kind of snapshot. There's detail, there's simplicity, there's a lot of things going on if you want kind of that gritty, metally kind of backing track. There's that. If you want a sweet melodies on top, you've got that. A few things. Sorry, I keep hitting my table. So I mean, this album does have uh, the more you kind of invest in the time that it takes. You know, when you said that you want to hear it again right after listening to it, you don't really want to put it on the shelf. I won't presume to speak for Doug or Sam, but there were many occasions where I had to put the music on a shelf because I'm just hearing it so much, and and the album had a long gestation. I'm sure maybe Doug had to put it on the shelf for a year or two while he worked on other things, and something kept calling us back, and it's great that these songs actually bubbled to the surface and kind of took over. It was a test of will to get it done because after so many years, we've all kind of not moved on, but we're doing different things.
Right.
So to kind of bring this back, brings up a lot of things. It's like I wasn't involved in the process until really, well, it's a couple of years ago now, where I got a call from Sam and saying, "Hey, do you want to like give a listen to these songs and see, and maybe you want to participate somehow?" And my answer was immediately yes, because I know that working with Sam Levin and Doug Harrison with this band, whether or not you immediately grasp onto things or not, it's going to be a process that is going to be enriching, and it's there's going to be something worthwhile at the end of it. So it's always an automatic yes. But we have very different opinions, and we pull things this way, that way. On the last album, it was very excruciating because it was basically four of us contributing our ideas in a stubborn way and in a very aggressive way.
Right.
Sam wanted to be more, powerful and more alive feel, and everyone had a different idea of what they wanted out of it. But after all these years, when we listen back to that album, I think we all have a little smile of satisfaction, like, God, how did we did it, we got through it. And I think at the end of it, we're like, okay, we don't want to do that again because it was so tough to be able to respectfully include everyone's ideas and be happy about the direction. There's a lot of songs that went direction that I didn't. I thought maybe they could have gone this way or that way. The song "Dear Mouse" reminds me a lot of an earlier song we have called "Pilot Plant." Similar vibe, not exactly the same, not as much detail, but I mean, more of a live band thing that was. But um, yeah, I guess I got off track a little bit, but I'll I'll leave it at that for now, I guess.
Now you were mentioning at the beginning, how you did songs for a live setting. Have you
Well,
guys
maybe
done
not
this?
this album, not Dear Mouse. Sorry if I wasn't clear. I'm talking about the
Oh,
previous album because we were a
previous
live
album, yeah.
band at that time. This one has been more of a recording project. Um, I don't think we actually ever really rehearsed the songs in a live setting at any point. Maybe little bits of stuff, but I think most of these songs were really just created in the studio, in our various studios, and in that way. It'd be fun if we ever find ourselves in the same city or we rehearse these as a unit, like how it'll evolve, because things change a little bit in that setting, right? When you don't have the luxury of 14 guitar players doing all your overdubs for you, and everyone in the band singing vocal harmonies. I'd like to get to that point, but um, yeah, these were basically more of a studio compositions. I think if I'm not presuming too much on Doug's part. Um, they weren't really created with the intent of playing them live. Whereas the last album, the full intention was that these have to come across live. And so we didn't rely on tons and tons of overdubs. All the parts were created in the room while improvising, like the band, like the drums, bass, and guitar. And our process was a little different than how we completed the songs. Yeah, this one I came late, and the songs grew on me. But there was a time where I couldn't really listen to them anymore for a few months because I heard them so much. But then, of course, as everyone kept completing their parts, and I kept hearing new mix downs and new versions, it became quite apparent that, like I said before, we had something special on our hands.
Yeah, because I always ask, whoever I'm talking to, if they, obviously you don't have the budgets of, for big giant tours, but usually like locally, or local centric, within
You
50
can
to
make it
100
happen.
miles.
Yeah, you can almost make that happen with no backing at all, and we've done that, and it's a lot of logistics and coordination that the band has to take on. Obviously, nowadays it's all DIY. You produce your own album, you produce your own merchandise. You don't have people doing that for you. So not only do you have to create the music and all the effort that it takes, but you have to do everything else as well. And for some people, that's not a problem. Uh, and other times, like it's just very difficult to put on a different hat. And now you're going to be the promo guy for your band, and now you're
Right,
going to do that. Things inevitably get dropped, like the ball gets dropped in a negative way here and there because you just can't cover all your bases.
right.
So it's a learning process how to manage the world nowadays. But it doesn't cost $1 million to record your album, your Fleetwood Mac Tusk album, or it takes the time and the investment that you have to take to get the most out of your equipment and learn what you need to do. But then you can produce fantastic sounding music just with your laptop nowadays. So things have shifted where like you said, the concerts used to promote the record, and now you just produce a CD and give it away. I mean, I wouldn't even think of asking someone for $10 to sell my CD. No, I
Right.
mean, people just stream music or they find free ways to download it, or that's not a money maker anymore. You do it for the self-satisfaction of writing and producing something.
Yeah, and also too, as someone said too, think of it as those streaming sites as your promotional. You're getting your name out there, and hopefully that I guess the goal with that is that everybody tells their friends, and then they tell their friends, and so on. Like that old. I'm not sure if you remember that there was a shampoo commercial where and your friends and so on. Then everybody, it just like multiplies the boxes of they're saying and so on and so on. So I mean, I guess in a perfect world, that's that's something that can happen. Um, but that's why I tell people it's like you go listen to this, see if you like it. If you like it, I strongly encourage you to, if they don't have a CD of the album, they have a digital download, get that because then you can access that for as long as you can. But if you're using, for instance, Spotify, there can come a time down the road where um, you may pull that from Spotify because you're not satisfied with where it's going. And then all of a sudden they go, well, I can't find this anymore. That's why I always tell people, purchase the product because then it's in your grasp. You don't have to go to a third party, especially if you buy CDs, because you just go off your shelf, pull it out, put it in your CD player. Or what I generally do with my CDs, I put them, onto one of these things for in my car because nowadays I'm not carrying 10 CDs around with me. because you, unless you have a nice little container to keep them in, people will look in your car and they'll say, "Well, I think I need to own that one." You
Well,
know,
you know, it's not about ownership anymore. It used to like buy the record, it was yours, it was like personal. This is my band. I love this record. It's not about ownership, it's just about access. So streaming is perfect for sort of the modern generation, and nobody really curates their music anymore. Like, you know how we used to make mixtapes? And
yes,
yeah, and I've got all my CDs and all my vinyls burned onto my computer so that I can create or curate a list of like every week I curate a list of 300 or 400 songs. I listen to everything throughout the week, and on Saturday, Sunday, I make a new list so that I can listen to something else in the car or
yeah,
on the street when I'm walking. I like to curate my own music, and as most people my age do, we'll put together our own lists. But other people want Spotify to do it for them. They want to hear, I don't know, maybe they don't care enough about music to like select every song and the order that they want it and all that kind of
right,
detail. It's okay just to have it on. And that's what's kind of great that, I have got a friend that's on Spotify, and then all of a sudden a fan song comes on from Dear Mouse. I'm like, okay, this is great. Spotify has decided where to place this song, where to curate it for
yeah,
the listener. Oh, you like this? You like that? Well, here's something else. That's a great way to get the exposure of it. That's all about it is, right? Exposure. We play live gigs to expose the band to the public, and these streaming sites not making at our level, one doesn't make a lot of money from it, but
right,
there's the opportunity of exposure. And I like your point. You could say, hey, if you like this, buy the download or buy the CD, even if you don't own a CD player, but that's really the only means to support the band so they can continue doing what you
yeah,
love, or hopefully what you love that they do.
yes. But the bands. I mean, you have as I said, the old school mentality of what a band is supposed to be and what everything. And whereas a band that may start today, they'll have a totally different outlook as to what, it's like, they don't even think about pressing a CD or anything. They just use the Spotify as their um, marketing tool and to get people, okay, yeah, well, by the way, we're playing these dates here in our general area. If you're in this area, come on down. And then that's where you make the money, you know.
Absolutely.
And then also, of course, any merchandise that's made up,
I
because
think people, I was going to
I've,
say, I
I,
think,
I, I've had a lot of people when I've worn this in the past, they're like, what is that? And I said, that's a band, from Canada. I mean, and it's like, if you like, harder edge stuff, this was a few years back. I said, this is something you dig. And again, there's that word of mouth that that's how I find out about music. It's word of mouth. Friends, like on Facebook, they tell me, oh, you should check this band out.
a recommendation, or someone says, hey, I know you
Yeah,
like this band. Hey, you should check this out. And then
yeah.
you do.
And
And
it
most of the
just,
time it's appropriate. I mean, yeah, people have turned me on to music,
and
saying,
then
hey,
you
well,
go
why is
down,
this?
and then you go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I don't always look back, but there's so much music from the past that I haven't explored yet. And
right,
we're talking like mainstream prog stuff, like Van de Graaff Generator, which is one of the top echelons of prog. I still haven't really gone into that yet. I'm still listening
right,
to, exploring the band Egg, Hatfield and North, National Health, a little more obscure stuff that
right.
I'm still discovering from 1971. So like to me, that music is still relevant. It's still alive. It's just, dormant or it's in the past, but there's so much music to go back and explore that I've spent the last few years expanding my record collection still. There was a period of probably 15 years where I'd stopped buying records and stopped buying CDs even, and now I like the hard copy. There's something about the permanency of the CD or the old-fashioned vinyl LP long play record, like something when you hold it in your hands. You don't need to, because you can access the music and you can still enjoy the music on your computer, on your MP3 player. Depends on how you want to digest it. And
Right.
I like the hard copy. I like the permanency of it. If my computer crashes and I lose all my files, oh boy, oh well, I'll just have. Oh, I still got the hard copies of everything, and
Right. Right. That's the
with
thing.
with this CD at this early juncture, we elected not to to press CDs, um, but I'm still gonna make my own a single, like one CD of this album. Like I mean,
Right.
I'm putting stuff together right now, but just for my own, just to put on my own shelf to put with the rest of the Fen CDs on the bottom shelf, because I want to have that permanency. I want to have the
Right.
hard copy. But I appreciate it that it's not needed in this time, and I support the streaming if that's how people want to digest their music.
Right.
A good friend of mine listens to music constantly, but he doesn't have any music. He doesn't have any. I gave him a CD once, and he didn't listen to it, so I took it back. 'Cause I'm like,
There you go.
well, okay, well, he's got it burned on his, he's got access to it, so you can still get the music. But that's how that
Right.
person digests their music, and that's okay.
And the
Um,
good thing with that Bandcamp is, you know, if you were offering the CD, then you're also getting the MP3 of it as well. So if you're
right.
out somewhere, you got it, on your phone, and you can say, "Hey, I got this new band," and then you go, "Oh, I left the CD at home. Next time I'm over, I'll bring it."
Okay.
Oh, now you just get your phone and get to the
Absolutely.
Bandcamp, and
Oh yeah.
so because
I
Hey,
do that.
Ron.
I do that all the time at work. Yeah. Hey, listen to this, the new Fan album. Yeah. I, yeah, I have everything, on my phone or on various MP3 players. It's a great source to access music instantly when you've downloaded it.
Ron, just wanted to let you know I'm going to have to sign off very
all right,
shortly. So
all
just want
right,
to thank you so much for having us and giving us some time to talk about our work over the last few years. So
yeah.
really appreciate that. And
I was
also,
very happy that when you said that you had something new coming out, I was like, okay, cool.
yeah, so we'll have another Slug Comparison album coming out in a few months. It's just working on the artwork right now, and then I'm gonna
Yes,
start
I know. I got to send you
planning the
something.
release. Yeah.
But both of you, thank you very much for taking your time out, to talk about this. And I appreciate the music over the years, and it's always a pleasure to listen to your music.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, really, really appreciate your support over the years too. And the way you talk about like how you're recommending it to friends and stuff. I mean, that's how it's going to get around. We don't have a machine behind us
Right.
pumping out the word, right? So it's so much word of mouth.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right. And when you get, when the Slug Comparison album comes out, you come on back for that one. Hopefully
Absolutely.
you'll be able to join Sam this time.
Totally. Yeah. All right, guys,
All
I'm gonna sign off. So have a great afternoon, and
right.
we'll connect again soon.
All right.
Talk to you
Take it
later.
easy. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.